How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and this is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. In today's video, I've got 4 news topics to cover, starting out with some new leaks surrounding Sony's new handheld that confirm some older leaks, which is great, but they also let us know that this thing is basically going to replace the PlayStation 4, which will be great for the 50% of you who haven't upgraded yet. Next up, your PS5 is about to become the best PS2 ever because that long rumored new emulator looks like it's coming out very soon. Third on the list, one of my favorite games so far of 2024 is coming to the PS5 very soon, and finally we're going to talk about how PlayStation's been breaking some records over on Steam. This video is sponsored by VITURE. VITURE's been a sponsor here on the channel for a long time now, so when they reached out and asked if I wanted to cover the VITURE Pro XR glasses and new Pro dock, I immediately said yes. I really loved using the VITURE 1 glasses with the PlayStation 5 because using their HDMI adapter, it made it so simple because all I had to do was plug the glasses into that adapter, and then I had a 120-inch screen directly in front of my face that was super clear. But all the things I loved about the VITURE 1 XR glasses are now even better with the VITURE Pros. The first big upgrade you get with the Pro glasses is UltraClarity. They have completely reconstructed the screen to make it as clear as possible using the newest Sony panel, which looks phenomenal in front of your eyes. Not only has it been upgraded to 120 Hz, which is awesome, the actual screen you're seeing in front of your face is also 10% bigger. My favorite new feature is that they have SGS A+ low eye fatigue certification, so I already put a few hours into the new Diablo IV season, and when I took them off, I was like kind of surprised because my eyes were not fatigued at all. It was like I was just sitting in front of my TV the whole time. They've also upgraded the electrochromatic film to make it even better, which is crazy because I thought it worked great before. If you don't know what that is, it basically lets you darken the world around the screen so that you won't see through the glasses while you're actually playing a game. It's hard to explain, but when you have them on your face, it feels like you're being transported into a completely pitch black room. It's honestly kind of awesome. And the upgrades the new mobile dock got are awesome as well because not only can you watch content in 3D, which I think is really cool, you can also plug in different monitors, other brands of glasses. They have the best dock for XR glasses on the market, which I think is really cool because they could have totally locked it down and made it proprietary. And one of the coolest things about the Pro Dock is that it'll give you up to 8 hours of extra game time on the Steam Deck or Nintendo Switch. All you have to do to get going with these things on the PlayStation 5 is either grab that HDMI adapter I mentioned at the beginning, or you can download the PS Play app on your phone. It's called Mirror Play on iOS. They're the official partner of VITURE, and I think that app works a lot better than the official Remote Play app. VITURE also has a neckband attachment that I've used extensively and absolutely love. It comes preloaded with PS Play, which is great, and they also have a controller that they made with 8-bit Dude that looks awesome and also works with pretty much any Bluetooth device you throw it at. And once they're on your face, you can use the myopic adjusters to adjust the screen so that it's crystal clear no matter where your eyes are situated on your head. They worked great out of the box for me though. I didn't have to adjust anything. And the coolest part is they're running a special promotion for viewers of my channel. You can get 10% off anything in the VITURE store except for the Pro XR glasses. If you want to buy it directly from VITURE, just go to pro.viture.com/PSReady. And if you want to buy them from Amazon, go to viture.us/PSReady. And then again, you'll get 10% off your purchase on anything except the Pro XR glasses. Real talk, I'm a believer in this technology. I think it works great. I've had a lot of fun with the original VITURE ones, and I'm having even more fun with the VITURE Pro XR glasses, so I recommend picking them up. Once again, huge shout out to VITURE for sponsoring this video. So let's jump into this first news topic, which is all about the PlayStation handheld. We already have reporting on this from MooresLawIsDead, which is as far as I need to go with the confirmation that this is happening. If you want to look into this dude's track record, he tells us the specs of pretty much every Sony console well before these consoles are even announced. I mean, you can look at his PS5 Pro specs. I guarantee they'll be at least 99% accurate, maybe some minor changes that have happened since he got that information, but it'll be mostly exactly the same as what we get with the final product. He's the one who told us about the PlayStation Portal well before it was announced. He also leaks information about PC specs and tons of other spec related things. So he already reported on this handheld a few months ago, and now we're getting more reporting on it that backs up what he claimed from a leaker who has a great track record, leaking stuff like the Horizon Forbidden West PC port, which he nailed down to the release date. So that's a pretty good source when it comes to leaking Sony information. So the coolest thing about this handheld, the PSP3 is what I'm going to call it, is that Sony is bucking the trend that they set with the PSP and the PS Vita, where back then, instead of having a game like God of War 2018, you would get God of War Chains of Olympus or Ghost of Sparta. That's a wrong comparison. If you, instead of having games like God of War 1 and 2, you would get Ghost of Sparta and Chains of Olympus. And then going into the PS Vita generation, they kind of bridged the gap a little bit, because in addition to games like Killzone Mercenary and Uncharted Golden Abyss, we got a bunch of collections of PS2 ports, from the Ratchet & Clank collection going all the way down to the Jack collection and the God of War collection, which had the first 2 God of Wars, and I'm pretty sure remasters of Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta, but if not, those games could just run on the Vita because it had PSP back compat. But then the Nintendo Switch kind of really shook things up. Nintendo, who was following the same track as Sony, kind of bucked their trend as well. They made one unified console, and then you would get remasters of 3DS games for $60. You'd also get the console games that would have ended up on the Wii or Wii U. That kind of evolved even further with the Steam Deck, where you can just play full-on Sony PS4 games pretty good on the go. You can get medium settings, 30 FPS all day long, so roughly equivalent to what you were getting out of the PlayStation 4. So when the rumors of this handheld started coming out, a lot of people were kind of thinking that maybe it would be able to play PS5 games, and then you'd have your entire library on the go. The disappointing update that's only slightly disappointing is that it looks like this thing is capping out at PlayStation 4. Now, that's not really too surprising, just because the advancements in the chips that go in these handhelds aren't really going at as fast of a pace as they are on the main like home console side. The Steam Deck OLED is essentially a stopgap console, while Valve literally waits for technology to get better so they can make an upgraded Steam Deck that's going to be a visually noticeable upgrade over what we have with the current Steam Deck. And that's why the new ROG Ally, the ROG Ally X, instead of having an upgrade in the chip, it's still using the Z1 Extreme. Like, the laptop chips that they're kind of tweaking to put in these little handhelds are not advancing as fast as desktop chips. So that benchmark of the PlayStation 4, I think, makes a lot of sense, and it's still extremely exciting to me, because if you look at the amount of games that we got on the PS4, I mean, that generation is still going. Sony's kind of given up on it. They're doing full-on PS5 games, but there are plenty of developers out there still releasing PS4 games, and if this is a product coming from Sony, it's going to be a lot different than Valve with the Steam Deck, where they're saying you can try any game on Steam, and the vast majority of them will at least boot up, but the settings experience you're going to have is fully tweakable by you. It's not like these games are coming with Steam Deck presets that have been tested widely and are guaranteed to work, whereas on this PlayStation handheld, Sony's going to make sure that every PS4 game will at least run probably as well as the original PlayStation 4, which is pretty good performance, especially with first-party Sony games like Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn. There's so many games I could list that would be amazing to take on a handheld, and you wouldn't have to mess with the settings at all. But things get even better when you consider that this thing will probably be one of the first handhelds that Sony, like a big manufacturer like them, puts out that's all digital. So you'd be able to take your digital library of PlayStation 4 games on the go, and if they really want this thing to take off, I would hope that they include at least PS1, PS2, PSP, and PS Vita emulation. The best thing would be PS3 emulation, but we can't even get that on the PlayStation 5, so I'm definitely not holding my breath there. That's all information from the new leaker, but if you go back to what MooresLawIsDead was saying, he said this thing will be able to run PS5 games. They'll just be downsampled and downscaled to different settings so that they basically run in the ballpark of what the PS4 or PS4 Pro would run them at. Either way, this is extremely exciting to me, just because the handheld market, it went away for a little while because I think people were just having too many games to buy and not enough money to buy them. Like, why would you buy Chains of Olympus if you could just go play God of War 2 for around the same price on your home PS2, right? Like, you don't really need an extra console. And then games got more expensive in the PS3 generation, and you're like, oh, I could play Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 on my PS3, or I could pay $40 and get Golden Abyss on top of a $250 console, on top of a new proprietary memory card. Like, that expense was what was keeping people away. But if this device allows you to take the games you already own on the go and have complete parity with saves, trophies, friends lists, everything like that on the little handheld itself, I think that makes it a much more enticing experience for most people who have a PlayStation console. And there's clearly a want for a PlayStation handheld because, as we've said time and time again, the PS Portal is selling way better than Sony ever thought it would. Like, people are clearly hungry to be able to take PlayStation games on the go. And if this thing does come out and it's not able to run full-on PS5 games, I would fully expect it to be able to at least remote play them in the exact same way as the PS Portal, because you can already do that on the Portal. You can do it on the Steam Deck. You can do it on your iPhone. I think it's a fair and healthy expectation that you'll be able to remote play play your games on this device if they aren't able to run on it. But even going up to the PS4 generation, I think is pretty damn good. I just also love Sony's handheld hardware. I think the PSP is way ahead of its time in terms of design. I loved the way that thing looked and felt in the hand. Of course, it didn't have dual joysticks. They basically made the ultimate PSP with the PS Vita, giving it 2 joysticks. And if they could get away from that rear touchpad and work in new triggers to work with this thing, I think that'd be even better. But again, look at the Steam Deck, look at the ROG Ally, look at even the Nintendo Switch. You can make a handheld console in that form factor that still retains all of the buttons that you would need. And of course, having a touchscreen in the middle of this thing basically replaces the touchpad. And of course, we have smaller PS5 style controllers like the Sense controllers and the controllers that are on the PlayStation Portal. So if they could work that over, give us the haptic feedback, give us the adaptive trigger, it's basically the ultimate PlayStation handheld. And that's extremely exciting to me. But I want to know if you're excited, so please let me know down in the comments below. That brings us to our second news story, which is that your PS5 is about to become a really good PS2. So when Sony announced this whole change to PS Plus, where they introduced PS Plus Essential, Extra, and Premium, a lot of the benefits that you get with Premium are related to classic games, stuff from the PS1, 2, and PSP era. They've done an okay job, I'd say, adding games to that every month, but their biggest problem is they don't add enough games, and they don't really add games people actually want to play. It's a lot of deep cuts, and specifically with PS2 games, they don't run all that well, and they don't have extra features like being able to quick resume or rewind the game or make save states, you know, all these features that you get in emulating PSP and PS1 games. And what that really came down to was the fact that the PS5 was emulating the PS4's PS2 emulator. So every PS2 game you would download would have its own emulator baked in that was like made specifically to run that game on the PlayStation 4. And then the PS5 was going up a layer and then emulating a game. So you don't get great performance out of the PS2 games. But then back in March, people found a website through LinkedIn called Implicit Conversions, and they claimed they were working on a brand new PS2 emulator for the PlayStation 5 and that they were getting games ready to go for the PlayStation 5 from the PS2 generation. And that was really exciting because it needs a new emulator that's natively made for the PlayStation 5, especially if they're selling these things as a perk for PS Plus Premium. I mean, I already think Premium is nowhere near worth it as is, so having features included that you're actually paying for in that asking price that don't really work the way they should, I think that's completely unacceptable, and Sony needed to hire a company to at least try to make a PS2 emulator, and it looks like that emulator has not only been made, but we're going to see the fruits of that labor very soon, because some websites have been able to find listings for new PS2 games that are going to be coming to the PlayStation Store, theoretically also available through PS Plus Premium. And the first game we're going to be getting that looks like it's using this new emulator is Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I absolutely love this game. I got it in like a multi-pack back at Costco, back when Attack of the Clones came out, and I thought it was really good. It was made by Pandemic, who's a great studio that EA unfortunately bought and closed down, but I've enjoyed the vast majority of their games, and I'm actually very curious to try out this new emulator with this game. The real hope here is that this game performs well. It has all these extra features that the other emulators that the PS5 can take advantage of already has, and then they open the floodgates and start putting out some of their best first-party games like the God of War series, the Ratchet and Clank series, the Jak and Daxter series, Silent Hill 2, Resident Evil 4. There's so many games from the PS2 generation that they could include on this PS Plus Premium tier, and it really does seem like the bottleneck so far has been them just accepting that the emulator was nowhere near good enough. So if they're working on a new one and it's ready to go, I hope this is the moment where it either opens the door to more games coming, or at the very least just runs them better than what we had before. And then finally, I'm crossing my fingers that when the PS5 Pro comes out, they have that emulator ready to go. I think it would suck if they kept that feature exclusive to the PS5 Pro, because the PS3 emulator on PC works extremely well even on mid-range hardware, and the PS5 is well above mid-range hardware when you're comparing it to PC. It's nowhere near the range of like a 4080 or 4090, but it's pretty close, and I think the regular PS5 should have the ability to run PS3 games. It's insane that Sony is just completely ignoring one of their very best generations by forcing us to use the new version of PlayStation Now, which works terribly. Third on the list, let's talk about one of my favorite games of 2024 so far, one game that I've sunk so many hours into, and that game is V Rising. If you don't know what this game is, it's basically the ultimate vampire simulator, because it takes a game that's an action RPG like Diablo and mixes it with a survival crafting RPG like, I don't know, Minecraft or like Conan Exiles or something like that. But the difference here is this game is actually finished. polished. It runs extremely well. The systems are incredibly well designed where it doesn't feel like they're skimping in either territory in terms of survival crafting and action RPG systems. Like, the whole game has a great quest line that takes you through 57 different bosses that all have different movesets and give you different powers, and also unlock new crafting recipes for your giant vampire castle. And they even have a collaboration with Konami to get Castlevania stuff into this game. You can turn into the Alucard Wolf from Symphony of the Night. You can build a Castlevania style castle with cool gothic looking windows. You can get the old classic Castlevania candelabras that you can put on the wall. Like, the actual crafting and building in this game is nuts. As someone who really likes Fallout 76 and the whole camp building features in that game, this is like putting it on a whole different level. And it was recently announced that it would be coming to PS5 later this year, but as it turns out, it's coming a lot sooner than we initially thought, because the developers announced that the release date for the PS5 version with all of the content, all of the extra bonuses and everything like that is June 11th, which again is right around the corner. I normally don't recommend pre-ordering games, but I put a ton of time into this game, and I actually like that while it was in early access, the developers, Stunlock Studios, they actually put a lot of time into optimizing the game so that it runs extremely well. So I'm assuming that it'll run well on the PlayStation 5. I think it's worth pre-ordering the Ultimate Edition of the game, because not only do you get that $18 Castlevania pack I already talked about, you also get a bunch of other cosmetic and castle building packs with it. But the best part is you get 5 days early access. Again, I've put so many hours into this game that it just keeps getting better, really. Like, it starts out really good, and it's just a perfect straight line up in terms of quality, fun, and just really good, rewarding combat and building simulations that you don't see in a lot of games. And there's no microtransactions. You don't get any bonuses for spending money in the game. It's all cosmetic stuff where if you want a Castlevania style castle, they give you that option. But if you don't want to engage with that, you can wait, skip the 5 days early access, and just pick it up for, I think, like 30 or 40 bucks. It's also not a full price game. Next on the list here, let's talk about how Sony's breaking records on PC. I don't think the record for Helldivers 2 being the fastest selling PlayStation game ever is going to be beat for a very long time, until at least Sony gets to this day and date release cycle with PS5 games and PC, because obviously there's a huge community there that will bolster the overall sales of games. But as far as their single player games go, Ghost of Tsushima finally dethroned the last throne holder, which was God of War 2018, which at this point is 3 or 4 PlayStation 5 ports ago. So that's a high number to beat. On the first day it was available alone, it was able to hit 77,000 users, and this just shows the hunger that people have for that classic style of PlayStation game where it's an open world, third-person action RPG, but instead of it being a bloated mess, everything is intentional and well-designed. I love the way you traverse this world where you'll see a little bird flying around, and then you'd be like, hey, I'll follow that bird, and then it'll take you to a side quest that shows you a hot spring that increases your overall health by like 20%, and stuff like that is a really cool twist on what we've seen before. I think Breath of the Wild really started this with the way it handled its open world, where you had to actually look around the map and go find things. Of course, that was evolved even further by Elden Ring, but I feel like Ghost of Tsushima deserves just as much, if not a little bit more credit, for how it's completely evolved the way open world games work. Ubisoft is coming out with Assassin's Creed Shadows. I'm off the Assassin's Creed series. I tried to put some time into Valhalla. That game is just a mess. I like the combat. I like the way it looks. I like the world, but like, it's just too freaking bloated. I don't need a game that's a live service single player game where it's getting new content drops and Christmas and Halloween events with tons of microtransactions every 2 or 3 months. All I want is a game where I can beat the story in 20 to 30 hours, and if I want to clean up the platinum, it'll take me an extra maybe 10 to 20 hours, and it'll feel like a wholly satisfying experience. And it's very clear that's what people wanted out of Ghost of Tsushima, because again, it's selling extremely well. Hopefully Sony gets Sucker Punch moving on this sequel, because I feel like there's a real hunger for it, obviously, and that could be a really cool game to be one of the first ones to come out on PS5 and PC at the same time, because again, they already have a huge community of Ghost of Tsushima players on PS5 and PC. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you today. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.